Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of Throwing the Curve by Lauren Fraser, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me for chapter 1. Was it too soon to be meeting his teammates? Peyton glanced over at Simon. Did she even want to meet his friends? What if she didn't like them? God, she wasn't even sure how she was feeling about Simon, let alone his friends. Ah. He winked and reached across the center console to place his hand on her knee. Relax, babe. They're going to love you. Remind me whose party this is again? She asked as she slid her hand nervously down her lap, smoothing out her skirt. She clasped Simon's hand, hoping it would calm her nerves. Going to a party with him felt like a big step, one she wasn't sure they were ready for. It's a housewarming party for Sanchez. He's new this season and plays left field. He just bought this place. It should be pretty low-key, just a few of the guys from the team and their dates. Does he have a first name? Simon chuckled. Yeah, Tony. The car pulled up in front of a sprawling rancher in Mission Bay. Peyton scanned the front of the house, her eyes lingering on the beautiful old rose bushes beneath the front windows, just like the ones at her grandma's house. She could almost smell them from here, and it instantly transported her back to making rose water on summer break as a kid. She pushed open the car door and rounded the front of the vehicle. Simon stopped beside her and made a rough noise in his throat, and she turned toward him. What? Nothing. I thought he would have bought something a little newer. This thing looks like it was built in the 80s. Peyton rolled her eyes. It doesn't look that old. She once again scanned the front of the house. It's lovely and the location's fantastic. There's a great public beach right down the street. She'd love to live in a place like this. Who wouldn't? Yeah, a public beach, Simon scoffed. Oh my God, could you be a bigger snob? Seriously, there's nothing wrong with a public beach. That's where most of us common folk go to swim. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her closer to him. Yeah, but you're not common anymore, baby. You're with me. I don't do common. She tensed at his tone. They'd only been dating for a few weeks, and she'd never dated someone with money before. She wasn't sure if the slight jabs at her economic level were normal or his way of trying to brag or what it was, but it grated. Let's go inside. He placed his hand on the small of her back as they made their way down the side of the house. Laughing and splashing sounds drifted toward her as they rounded the corner and into the large backyard. Peyton stopped as she looked around to get her bearings. Holy cow. Older home or not, this backyard alone was worth buying the house. A large in-ground pool with several people splashing around took up the right side of the yard. A sweeping decorative cement patio curved around the pool. Off to the left was a beautiful covered area with a fireplace and a large flat screen TV hanging above it. Who had a TV outside? This was whole other level stuff than what she was used to. Andy, a deep voice yelled, drawing her attention toward the barbecue. Simon walked toward the man working the grill. Hey, Tony, thanks for having us. Glad you could make it. Tony glanced over at her. His dark brown eyes scanned her from head to toe. He smiled and stuck out his hand. Hi, I'm Tony. You must be Carmela. Ouch. Peyton's shoulders tensed. Who the hell was Carmela? Simon laughed. Nah, man, this is Peyton. Oh, sorry, my mistake. I'm new, so I'm still trying to figure out who everyone is. She glanced over at Simon, and he rolled his eyes like Tony was an idiot for getting her name wrong. He smacked Tony on the back. No problem, man. It happens. We're going to grab a drink, Simon said. Sure, help yourself. There's beer and wine in the fridge there, he said, pointing to the small stainless fridge on the outdoor kitchen. And I think Saunders is in the kitchen watching Kendall make margaritas if you want one of those. What'll it be? Simon asked. A margarita sounds great, actually, she replied. They wove their way inside the kitchen. Hey, looks like this is where the party is, Simon called out. 5 heads swiveled toward them. Hey, Andy. Peyton scanned the group. Good Lord, she had not been prepared for the testosterone flowing off these men as they all swung their attention toward her. Can we grab a couple of those, Kendall? Simon asked. Told you if you stood around taking and talking instead of blending, you'd be stuck making these all night. A brown-haired guy, she was pretty sure was the shortstop Pete Saunders, smacked the woman making drinks on the butt. Peyton glanced over at Simon. Was he going to introduce her? Instead, he stepped up to the island and grabbed a tortilla chip from the bowl and dipped it in the salsa. Okay, apparently manners weren't his strong suit. She stared at him. Wow, he was like a different person when he was alone with her than he was in front of his teammates. The Simon she knew had pursued her hard. He had been sweet and attentive. This Andy, as his teammates called him, was a bit of an arrogant jerk. She eyed him speculatively and wondered which one was the real man. She stepped up to the counter. Hi, sorry, looks like Simon isn't going to introduce us, so I'm Simon glanced over at her. Sorry, babe. He placed his hand on her hip. Peyton, this is Gonzo, Smitty, Zip, Kendall, and... He paused and turned to the man standing on the other side of Peyton. Wow, he was gorgeous and looked seriously pissed. She sucked in a breath as ice blue eyes drilled into her. Simon snorted beside her. The guy glaring at us is Undertaker. I told you not to fucking call me that, glaring guy growled. Apparently there was no love lost between these two. Why not? It's perfect. Simon glanced around at the other men around the island. Don't you guys think it fits him perfectly? Not really, no, Pete answered. Gonzo wrinkled his nose and shook his head. I think Ryan is good. No need for a nickname, really. Ace works, Smitty piped in. Come on, you guys. Just because Ryan has no sense of humor doesn't mean the name isn't perfect, Simon said as he picked up another tortilla and dipped it. She turned to Simon. Sorry, why would Undertaker be perfect? Come on, babe. I thought you were a ball fan. She bristled at the mocking tone of his voice. She definitely was not a fan of Simon with the boys. I am. I just have to agree with him that Undertaker sounds more like he's a wrestler than a pitcher. How'd you know I was the pitcher? Grumpy guy asked. She glanced over at him and again was struck by his piercing blue eyes. Sheesh. She had seen all these guys on TV when she watched the games and the interviews, but she hadn't been prepared for them up close. The TV did not do Ryan Graves justice. Like Simon said, I watch sports. It's kind of a job requirement to understand the game. Ryan's eyes ran down her body, and she felt the urge to cross her arms over her chest. He wasn't looking at her like she was a desirable woman, but like something he found on the bottom of his shoe. What the hell was that about? Yeah, what kind of job is that? He mocked. Oh, fuck, Smitty mumbled. Ryan's stare whipped off her and over to Smitty. What? Incoming, Smitty muttered and nodded toward the doors behind them. Fuck. Simon groaned and took several steps away from her just as the sliding glass door opened and 3 women walked in. Surprise! The curvy brunette called as she sashayed toward Simon and leaned in for a kiss when she reached him. Peyton felt like she'd been kicked in the stomach. He had a girlfriend? What the heck? She looked over at Simon and the beautiful woman now wrapped around his side. He refused to make eye contact with her. Mother effer. She shook her head as a sick feeling swept through her stomach. Hi, everybody, the woman called. Hey, Carmela, Ryan said from beside her. Carmela eyed Peyton up and down. Who are you? Carmela asked. That's Peyton. She's Undertaker's date, Simon said. No, Ryan growled. Right, sorry, we agreed I wouldn't call you that. Simon laughed. He looked down at Carmela and made a face. He has no sense of humor. Carmela squealed. Oh my gosh, I've never met one of Ryan's girls before. This is so exciting. I'm Simon's wife, Carmela. His wife? Peyton asked. Her ears buzzed, the noise getting louder and louder. She looked around the room, trying to get her bearings. Her mind raced to catch up with what was happening in front of her. Was she being punked? This was like some bad movie. Carmela smiled and waved her hand in the air. A huge diamond sparkled on her ring finger. 7 years. Oh my God, she was a homewrecker. How had this happened? He was married? Her eyes flashed to his bare ring finger. Why didn't he wear a ring like a normal person? Who's watching the kids? Simon asked his wife. You have kids? Peyton squeaked. Yep, 3 of them, Carmela replied to Peyton before turning to her husband and patting his chest. Don't worry. When Sheila called and asked me to come, she'd already okayed it with her nanny, so they are all at our place. Peyton placed a hand on her stomach. Oh my God, she was going to be sick. She needed to get out of here. Her eyes flashed around the room. Where's the bathroom? She asked. The woman across the island from her, Kendall, possibly, pointed to the staircase on the right. It's upstairs at the end of the hall. You can't miss it. Thanks, she murmured before making a beeline out of the room. Once inside the washroom, she leaned her hands against the counter and dropped her head. How had this happened? How could she be dating a married man? She'd asked him about his relationship status, and he told her he was single. She cringed. No, he said there was no one she needed to worry about, and she'd stupidly thought that meant he was single. Paired with a naked ring finger, and she'd figured it was fine. Sure, she'd expect he might be a bit of a player because he was a professional athlete, but she thought that meant he wouldn't get serious about her, which is why they hadn't officially slept together despite several weeks of dating. She covered her mouth and groaned. Ew, she'd had oral sex with a married man. Gross. She sat down on the edge of the tub. Oh my God, she was the other woman. Nausea rolled in her gut. No, 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 no. This was not happening. She couldn't be the other woman. An affair had ripped her parents apart. There was no way she was going to be that person. She'd done everything right. How could this happen? She looked around the washroom. Great, and now she was stuck in a stranger's bathroom with the guy she was having an affair with downstairs with his wife. She was a homewrecker. Oh my God. She was no better than the woman her dad had been with. She had to get out of here. But how? With trembling hands, she pulled her phone out of her purse. Her vision blurred as she tried to pull up her contacts. Great, and now she was crying. She wiped her face, took a shuddering breath, and dialed her best friend, Rain. The second Rain picked up, she whispered, He's married. Who's married? Rain whispered back. Simon, Peyton whispered louder. Holy shit, he's married? Rain yelled. Sorry, he's married? She whispered. Peyton chortled, making a weird half-laugh, half-snotty crying sound. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Why are you whispering? I don't know. You were whispering, so I went with it, Rain answered. Well, I'm hiding in the bathroom at a party. That's why I'm whispering, Peyton replied. She looked over at the small bathroom window. Shoot, there was no way she could squeeze out of that little thing. My God, she couldn't catch a break. Why was it so hot in here? She grabbed the edge of her shirt and fanned herself. Pay, you still there? Rain's voice cut through the buzzing in her ears. Yeah, just trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of here. Can you come pick me up? Sorry, sweetie. I'm at work and have a client coming in 10 minutes. Fantastic, she grumbled. Getting an Uber all the way out here and back to her place would cost a month's rent. How the hell can he be married? Didn't you ask? Of course I asked. I'm not an idiot, she snapped. Sorry, you didn't deserve that. I'm just, God, I don't know what I am. Pissed off, embarrassed. She rubbed her hands across her face. Gross. Why was she so sweaty? She glanced at her flushed face in the mirror. This day was just getting better and better. Now she was having like a hot flash or something. She flapped her arms to try to cool herself down. Rain, I've got to get out of here, she whispered as the panic roared in her chest again. Just breathe. It'll be fine. It's not going to be fine. The jerk told his wife I was Ryan Graves' date. Is he cute? Are you freaking kidding me right now? What? I'm just asking. I mean, clearly you can't date Simon now, and it's been a hot minute since you got laid, so not helpful, Rain. Like, at all. Okay, so maybe your new date could give you a ride or something. Yeah, sure, like the guy who glared at me like he hated me on sight is going to give me a ride. Seriously? He glared at you? Rain asked. Yep, but totally makes sense now. He thought I was the other woman, she groaned, which I totally am. Tears welled up in her eyes and she looked up at the ceiling. God, Rain, help me. What am I supposed to do? I can't keep hiding in the bathroom forever. People will start to think it's weird. No sooner had the words left her mouth than there was a knock on the door, followed by a deep male voice. You okay in there? Crap, Rain, she whispered. Yep, fine, be out in a second. She called to the stranger at the door. Could this day get any worse? I gotta go, she whispered to Rain. Call me when you get home, Rain said. Peyton hung up the phone, glanced at herself in the mirror. Perfect. She looked like a hot mess. She splashed some cold water on her face, looked at herself again. Awesome. That made it worse. Now her face was all blotchy. Oh, God, kill me now. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed the doorknob and pulled the door open. Of course, it had to be him, Ice Glare Graves. It's all yours, she said as she tried to step by him. You okay? He asked. Not really. Laughter drifted up from downstairs. There was no way she was going back down there. Do you know the address so I can get an Uber? He smirked at her. Didn't sign on for meeting the wife today, hey? Didn't know there was a wife. Yeah, right, he scoffed. Peyton's shoulders tensed. Who the heck did this guy think he was judging her like this? Obviously I didn't, or I wouldn't be here. Come on now, that's not entirely true. There are at least 2 women in the pool out back there that are dating guys they know are married because they are fake dating other guys on the team. I have no intention of being one of those guys. Are you kidding me? Nope. He looked her up and down and shook his head. So what? You didn't Google Andy before you started dating? No, why would I? Right, you expect me to believe you started dating a professional athlete and didn't look him up online? Please. I didn't, she snapped. Although now she really wished she had. I didn't think I had to. Sure, he laughed. Sell that one to someone else, sweetheart. Are you calling me a liar? She glared at the man in front of her. What an arrogant prick. How dare he stand there and judge her when his friends were the kind of guys who behaved like this? Just calling it like I see it, sweetheart. Screw you, she seethed. Not really interested, thanks. Peyton's jaw clenched. This guy was unbelievable. I'm going to need you to move out of my way. What, so you can join the party? I'm not having you go down there and embarrass Carmela in front of everyone. Embarrass Carmela? Right. She took a deep breath. You have no reason to believe me, but I have no intention of hurting Carmela. Simon might be a jerk, but his wife did nothing to me. I need to get out of here. Can you help me do that, please? He stared at her for several minutes before finally nodding in agreement. Sure, come on. At the top of the stairs, he paused and glanced back at her. What was your name again? Peyton. Peyton, got it. He looked down the stairs and sighed. All right, Peyton, let's do this. Why did he have to make it feel like they were facing a firing squad instead of his teammates? This didn't bode well for her getting out of there unscathed. The moment they stepped into the kitchen, the women descended on her like a pack of hyenas. So Simon said you run the sports program for kids that he volunteers at. Is that how you met Ryan? Carmela asked. How Ryan and I met? She stammered. Yes, how did you two meet? Carmela prodded. She looked around the room at all the people staring at her expectantly, waiting for her response. She didn't want to lie. God, she didn't want to be here at all. A hand brushed across her shoulder and she glanced back at Ryan. Peyton isn't feeling very good, so I'm going to run her home and come back. So maybe we can save the Inquisition for another time. Hey, Carm? He smiled at Simon's wife. Carmela wrinkled her nose at him. It wasn't an Inquisition. I'm just curious about how you met. Carmela's eyes warmed as she smiled at Ryan. You never bring women to these things, so of course, when you do, we know she must be special. I want to make sure she deserves you. Thanks, Carm. I appreciate it. You don't have to worry about me. Of course I do. You're the sweetest guy I know. Carmela turned to Peyton. You better be good to him. Jesus, Carm, he's a grown man, not a puppy dog. Maybe he brought her because she's hot and he wants to fuck her, Simon said. Peyton sucked in a breath. Did he really just say that? Carmela elbowed Simon in the gut and he let out an oomph sound. You're such a dick, Ryan growled. His entire body was tense against Peyton's side, like it was taking everything in him to stay in place. The stranger was more protective of her than the man she was supposed to be dating. What? Simon asked. It was official. If they hadn't been done before she found out about his wife, seeing what a douche he was around his friends would have solidified that deal for her. Peyton stared at the man in front of her. What had she been thinking, dating him? Carm, I will never understand what you see in the sky, but it's always a pleasure to see you, Ryan said Ryan said, then turned back to Peyton. You ready to go? Yeah, definitely, she replied. Ryan pressed his hand against her back and guided her toward the door. Who knew her knight in shining armor would be the one person at the party who hated her?